I've heard a lot of people use the phrase, queer existence is resistance. But I think another end of that we need to examine is how queer resistance leads to queer existence. I think a great example of that is in the history of punk rock. The phrase has its origins in Victorian England, where it was originally used to describe a female prostitute, but eventually changed to include young men, usually soliciting older men. Fast forward to the 20th century, and punk evolved to describe anything that is really counterculture and against the status quo. Most histories of punk rock will denote the beginning of the movement in the mid-70s with the release of the Ramones' first studio album. However, the ideas behind punk rock didn't come from nowhere. They came from other areas of counterculture, including gay bars, gay clubs, and queer people. A group whose existence had been counterculture for virtually all of history. Even from the early days of the punk rock movement, queer people were pretty widely accepted within punk spaces. Think of CBGB, or the Velvet Underground, or Andy Warhol. However, in the 80s, with the AIDS epidemic and queer prejudice reaching an all-time high, queer people were forced out of places that had previously been accepting of them. I think a prime example of this can be seen on the West Coast, when white supremacists and skinheads began shifting from Northern California more into the cities like San Francisco, forcing many queer people out of places that had been traditionally accepting of them. Out of the displacement of queer people who just wanted to listen to music that they felt like represented them, came a new genre called Queercore. Queercore was born in the only places queer people could find, like basements or parking lots, and my favorite example, in the auditorium of a deaf school because the students didn't mind the noise. This underground scene wasn't advertised on the radio or on TV, but through interpersonal connections and networks between queer people and the distribution of things like zines. By the 90s, these DIY venues really found a community, and most major cities had a pretty robust scene. If it wasn't for queercore, subgenres like grunge or even hyperpop wouldn't even exist. So this Pride Month, go support a community, go visit a house show, and keep getting gay off that tequila.